Most people think being ignored means they lost. It doesn't. Sometimes silence is the beginning of power. The moment you stop chasing people who didn't value you, something changes. You stop looking desperate. You stop looking available. And without saying a word, you begin becoming the kind of person they cannot easily forget. That is the silent reversal, when self-respect does what begging never could. Today we're going through 9 attitudes that quietly change the way you carry yourself, the way you move, and the way people feel your absence. Not to get revenge, not to prove a point, but to become so calm, so grounded, and so self-assured that what they once overlooked starts to look rare. The first 2 attitudes are simple, but they change everything. Stop chasing attention and stop over-explaining your worth. Chasing communicates need. Silence communicates strength. Approval keeps you reaching. Self-respect keeps you standing. And most people never realize how much power they lose by trying to be understood by someone who already chose not to value them. The more you explain, the more you sound like you need permission to exist in their life. But a calm withdrawal creates something else, scarcity. And scarcity makes people notice what they took for granted. Stoicism teaches this clearly. Dignity does not beg to be seen. It simply stands. It does not perform. It does not plead. It holds its ground. And once you stop asking to be chosen, you begin building the kind of presence that no longer needs to ask for anything. The next layer is emotional control. The next 2 attitudes are to stay emotionally calm and never react in ways that give your power back to them. This is where reaction loses to control and chaos loses to peace. People who undervalued you often expected visible pain. They expected a collapse, a chase, an emotional outburst, something that proved they still had access to your inner world. But calm changes everything. A composed person becomes harder to manipulate and far more difficult to dismiss. Stoicism teaches that your response is your reputation, not your words, not your explanations. Your response. When you keep your center, you stop feeding the situation with emotion, and that alone makes you more powerful. Most people stay forgettable because they react exactly how others expect. But when your presence becomes controlled, quiet, and unreadable, people start realizing they misjudged you. The next 2 attitudes are to set clear boundaries and become selective with your access. This is where access loses to scarcity and familiarity loses to respect. When you stop making yourself endlessly available, people begin to understand that your time is not automatic, it is valuable. And this is where regret begins, not because you demanded it, not because you forced a reaction, but because you removed easy access. Most people never realize how quickly they become replaceable when they are always reachable. Stoicism teaches that what you allow repeatedly becomes your standard. So if you keep opening the door to disrespect, confusion, or inconsistency, you teach people how to treat you. A wise person does not protect what keeps hurting them just because it feels familiar. They become selective. They become precise. And that precision is what makes them impossible to casually overlook. The next 2 attitudes are to invest in your own growth and make your life visibly stronger. This is where performance loses to authenticity and stagnation loses to evolution. Nothing makes people feel your loss more than seeing you become more grounded, more disciplined, and more self-contained after they underestimated you. But this is not about pretending to be okay. It is about actually becoming better. Most people regret losing someone who keeps rising without bitterness, without begging, and without needing to prove anything. That kind of growth changes how others see you, but more importantly, it changes how you see yourself. The hidden cost of staying the same is that no one feels your absence. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Improve quietly, keep your focus inward, and let the results speak louder than any explanation ever could. The final attitude is to leave without bitterness. This is where peace wins over revenge, and freedom wins over emotional attachment. Bitterness keeps you mentally tied to people who no longer deserve your attention. It keeps the door open in your mind long after it should have been closed. But the strongest version of this lesson is not, make them regret you. It is, become so complete that their opinion no longer controls your mood. That is where real power begins. Most people never realize how strong calm detachment is until they see how quickly it changes the energy around them. The moment you stop seeking payback, you gain a kind of authority that cannot be faked. A Stoic person does not chase closure from the people who taught them the lesson. They close the loop themselves, quietly, cleanly, completely. The goal is not to become cold. It is to become so self-respecting that your absence is felt before your words are even missed. A person who is calm, selective, disciplined, and emotionally unavailable to disrespect becomes rare, and rarity creates regret. People do not always chase what they loved. Sometimes they chase what they can no longer control. And that is why quiet strength changes everything. The moment you stop begging to be valued is the moment you become impossible to ignore. You no longer move like someone waiting to be chosen. You move like someone who already knows their worth. If this spoke to you, comment which attitude you need most. Subscribe for more Stoic lessons and keep building the kind of quiet power, discipline, and self-worth that cannot be easily replaced.